Good evening and welcome to Concordia News, your #1 source for the latest in youth news. I'm Jordy Yeager, and on tonight's show, Doring is on the rise, an exclusive report on the dangers of life in the bike lane. Have young Montrealers lost faith in the power of their vote? We've got the story. McGill University's sexual assault policy may be revised after 3 students were charged with the sexual assault of a former Concordia student. Marijuana, the drug that's slowly being legalized across America. Why not legalize all drugs? And on tonight's International Watch, human rights activist Carol Gray joins us to talk about the current state of Egypt. Montreal cyclists are demanding that more be done to prevent doring, drivers opening their doors and hitting passing cyclists. Drivers can be fined a maximum of $52, but those affected think the punishment does not fit the crime. Robin Delacorte has more.
It has been happening for as long as cars and bicycles have been sharing the road. Car drivers opening their door without looking just as a cyclist is passing by has come to be known as doring. With the arrival of bike rental stands and bike lanes, accidents on Montreal roads are happening more often.
Many cyclists are now using helmet-mounted cameras to document traffic run-ins. With the arrival of bike rental stands and bike lanes, accidents on Montreal roads are happening more often.
Using information obtained by the Gazette, a YouTube user plotted out nearly 4,000 cycling collisions in Montreal occurring between 2006 and 2010. The following graphs, also taken from the Gazette, show a breakdown of accidents. According to the graphs, 2007 saw the most number of accidents, just over 800. June was the month most accidents took place, while they happened most often on Thursdays, at 5 p.m. on any given day, and most often on Sherbrooke.
We attempted to contact the Montreal Police Department, but could not secure an interview. Other Montreal cyclists had this to say.
I got almost hit a couple times because there was some drivers who were trying to do U-turns, or I was going near the sidewalk, and almost got hit a couple times because people don't put their flashers on, and it's pretty dangerous. Even if I go safely on my bike, sometimes I can almost get hit. You never know. There's always cars there's always good drivers. There's a lot of bad drivers in Montreal. You gotta watch out when you're on the bike.
Despite Quebec automobile insurance covering damages under any circumstance, the Quebec Highway Safety Code states that an accident is an event during which injury or damage is caused by a moving road vehicle.
We interviewed Montreal cyclist and former bike messenger Cam Novak to get his side of the story.
I honestly just feel for the people immediately, because I'm in the street every day, and so I understand what it means to feel for your life and be afraid. The infrastructure right now that we have is very focused on cars, and so I think who's to blame would be the infrastructure. That's the closest thing I would come. Improving the way things communicate on the street. Why are there only car lights and pedestrian lights?
This is Robin Delacorte, Concordia News.
Montreal has been plagued with allegations of corruption. 2 mayors have resigned in the past year. Voters are called to the polls this coming November to elect a new mayor. How will they react? Milan Ortenberg reports.
Montreal's political landscape has been shaken by allegations of corruption and collusion. City Hall watchers say that the upcoming election could be a much-needed game-changer. But experts say young Montrealers have been losing faith in municipal politics. With 1 in 3 eligible voters under the age of 35, former Liberal MP Marlene Jennings says their ballot shouldn't be underestimated.
Young people work. They work a lot more today, even if they're studying, than we saw back in the, 50s and 60s and even the 70s. And so when they work, they pay income tax. They should have an interest in where their money is being spent and whether it's being spent well.
And they do have an interest. Last year's Maple Spring was a perfect example of that.
The Carré Rouge movement was over a $50 a year increase. It mattered to them.
So if they care that much, why aren't they voting?
A lot of young people don't understand the system of government, are not attracted to what they think they know about it, and then the issues of corruption don't help either.
Overall voter turnout was less than 40% last year, and youth numbers even slimmer. But it hadn't always been that way.
Prior to the 1970s, the youth vote was actually quite strong. Up until that time, young people lived with their parents.
Nowadays, they're moving out earlier and engage in a more individualistic lifestyle.
They no longer had that pressure of, okay, we finished supper, it's time for us to go and vote.
In today's electronically driven world, the new incentive to get the youth involved in municipal elections lies in social media. This year's candidates have caught on by having Twitter pages, Facebook accounts, and well-designed websites.
One of the keys to reaching young voters is using the new technologies, using social media. But you have to get beyond just that. You have to find a way to build that into actual votes. And that means you have to be able to identify individual youth voters, be able to connect with them one-on-one, not just as a group, and be able to spur them to actually come out to vote.
But at Friday's town hall debate, some said more could be done to reach out to young voters.
I think there's going to be a strong turnout. Whether there's going to be a strong turnout among young voters, that's a different story. There needs to be that effort on the part of city officials to engage young Montrealers, and that's starting to take place, but there's definitely a lot more effort to be done.
On November 3rd, Montrealers will take to the polls, but it remains to be seen if this year's candidates have reached out to young voters. This is Mila Nortenberg for Concordia News, Montreal.
McGill University may need to revise their sexual assault policy. 3 former football players are facing charges of sexual assault against a former Concordia student. The players have not been punished yet, even though the assault allegedly happened 15 months ago. They quit the team when the Montreal Gazette broke the story this Halloween. The university is waiting for a judicial outcome before charging the students under their code of conduct. Now, McGill's student union is calling for mandatory mutual consent workshops for all varsity athletes. The 3 students will face a preliminary hearing on December 18th. With Uruguay and 2 U.S. states legalizing marijuana, some are left wondering which illegal substances are next. Overall drug legalization is viewed by some as a way to curb gang activity and help treat addicts. Vanek Kaitchen has the story.
The debate over marijuana legalization has become so prominent that even Liberal Party leader Justin Trudeau openly admits to having smoked during his time in Parliament. Now, some see marijuana as a gateway to opening a dialogue for the legalization of all drugs. Researcher and physician Didier Jutras-Aswad specializes in mental health and addiction. He believes the legalization debate must be taken on a case-by-case basis.
Actually, we know that each substance has its own effect, sometimes more than others, its own risk. So I think it's not about drug legalization as a whole, but it's really to be able to take good decision about the legal status of each of these drugs.
He believes that when it comes to legalization, there is more to look at than the drug's potential dangers.
The medical data are not the only thing to take into consideration, and freedom should be taken into account. As a clinician, one thing I could tell actually is that the jail is certainly not the best place to treat someone who has a problem with a substance.
Concordia University professor of economy Ian Irvine has studied the effects of taxing and regulating tobacco and alcohol, and thinks drugs should be approached the same way.
The key in taxing these products is to find the right level of taxation. So you want to make the price high enough to deter people from consuming too much. So you want to reduce consumption, so prices are a good way of doing that.
While some argue legalization would add a significant amount of government jobs, that might not be the case.
But as far as the overall change in employment is concerned, we might see a small increase in employment, but nothing I think that's going to have a big impact on the overall unemployment rate in Canada.
We joined longtime drug dealer Zed while he was on the job. The cocaine and marijuana distributor feels drug use should be up to the individual.
You don't have sovereignty over your own consciousness. You don't have sovereignty over jack shit, pretty much. You educate people as far as the consequences, the risks. You give them the whole picture of what it is. Generally, people will want to stay the hell away from it.
Zed says his client base ranges from politicians to construction workers, and he believes drug use is more widespread and common than we perceive.
Everybody consumes drugs in the end. From what I've learned is that people can lie, hide, but everybody at one point or another, if you look at something as simple as coffee, whatever it is, everybody's manipulating their neurochemistry.
The legalization debate rages on. Some see financial benefit to be had, others think it will corrupt our society even further. But most important is the consideration of personal freedoms. How much government interference is too much? For Concordia News, I'm Vanek Kaitchen.
Recently overthrown Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi's trial has been postponed until January 2014. Egypt's future remains uncertain, but for now, the military maintains power. With more on the current state and her own personal experiences in Egypt, we welcome human rights expert and activist Carol Gray. She is currently working on an oral history project conducted while studying at the American University in Cairo. Hello, Carol.
Thank you, Jordy, for inviting me.
So you were in Cairo on the first day of the uprising. What was that like?
That was a day I will never forget, and I was scared that day. Anyone would be scared that day. But what was really striking to me is the young Egyptians, not young and old, but a lot of young people, they just seemed absolutely fearless. There would be like clouds of tear gas, and this tear gas really would make me keel over. I couldn't breathe. It stung my eyes. It stung my throat, and I just want to retreat to a building. These young people kept going. They'd go right into this cloud of tear gas, going towards the square, going towards the square. And so the will of the people was just amazing.
When you were in Egypt, did you think an uprising was on the way?
It was very surprising to me that Egypt broke out into revolution. It was funny because though I'm not particularly religious myself, we were attending a Christian church while we were there. The minister, like the weekend before the revolution broke out, he gave a sermon about questioning authority, and he showed Tank Man up on the screen. I was kind of amazed, Tank Man from Tiananmen Square. Anyway, and he said, you may be concerned that what happened in Tunisia is going to happen here. And I kind of whispered to the person next to me whispered, well, I hadn't been concerned until he mentioned it. and I had the same reaction because it had been so strictly controlled. You didn't talk politics in the metro. Security forces have ears everywhere. Their whole generation was having their lives just cut. And so they didn't have the family at home that was at risk if they went and became martyrs in the square, because they couldn't have afforded to have that family, and they couldn't have the apartment, and they had no spouse. So you had this, later on, even though I didn't know it at the time, later on, if you look at the factors that are likely to cause a revolution, they were all there.
How has power changed hands since Morsi was overthrown? Is there currently a shift towards democracy?
The power is solidly in the hands of the military. And it's been in the hands of the military for decades, maybe generations. And you have a system where the military not only controls a lot of the political process, but they control much of the economy. Between 15 and 40% of the economy is owned and controlled by the military. And when the military gets funding, for example, $1.3 billion per year is what they had been getting from the U.S., that money comes to them straight to them. There's no parliament that oversees their budget. They are a state within a state, what some people call the deep state, and that's a core problem.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is next for Egypt?
I think in the short term, a lot of oppression. These thousands of people being detained, that's not going to change right now. Thousands of civilians being tried in military courts, that's going to continue, unfortunately. Hopefully, eventually, the government will see that this isn't a way to develop a more peaceful democratic society. If they eventually have another democratic election, and hopefully they will, the Brotherhood could win again. They're the most organized political party.
Thank you, Carol, and we'll be keeping a close eye on the situation.
Goodbye, and thanks very much for letting me have a chance to tell you what I saw from the Egyptian people.
For Concordia News, I'm Jordy Yeager.